everyone. While you're introducing yourself, we'll be doing a brief shout out while we're waiting to start this and waiting for participants to join us. Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Emeka. Welcome. It's good to have you here.
Hello, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, waiting for more persons to introduce themselves in the comment section. Just tell us your name and where you're joining us from. And if it's okay with you, you can let us know if you're a parent or you're a CSO person or, just by way of introduction, anything that you feel comfortable sharing with us. Thank you. Oh, hi, this is Chinyere from Suwa Ibadan. Hello, Sambo Evelyn. Well, Yakubu from Suwa Initiative Abuja. Fantastic. You're all welcome. Happy to see you here. Happy to see you here. Looking forward to a fantastic and educative evening. Yeah, Dr. Emeka has dropped an amazing introduction as well. He's one of our speakers, and well, I'm just going to leave the introduction for whoever is going to use it. Time is going to come when I'm going to do like a proper introduction for him. But welcome once again, Dr.
Thank you
Emeka,
very much.
and thank you for agreeing to do this with us. Yeah. Oladayo Davis from Gudu. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for being a part of this. Yeah, waiting for more persons. Just type your name as you're joining us. You can just introduce yourself in the comment section. Just tell us your name and where you're joining us from. Just before we begin. And thank you. We have an amazing joined choir. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for keeping to time. Ruth Afolabi from Life Camp Abuja. Thank you. Oh, Johanna Daniel from Caro. Abuja people seems to be winning this round. Oh, okay. Thank you, all of you. Thank you and welcome. Welcome. Yeah, I can see a lot more persons joining. So please just introduce yourself in the comment section and we'll do a brief shout out here. We'll be starting shortly. Shortly, we'll be starting. Oh, hi, Linus Pius Peter. Welcome to the call. Kemi Heavens from Lagos. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome. Thank you. Ugochi Nsofo from Lagos. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. From Lagos. Thank you for
Yeah,
joining.
right. You got the name right. It's a pleasure being here. Good afternoon.
The chic.
Okay, so we'll just go straight to we are starting. Yeah, we want to keep to time as much as possible. Good afternoon once again, everyone, and welcome. Truly a pleasure to see you all for February Knowledge Café. My name is Comfort Ayua, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. We are aware that today's topic is one that makes quite a number of persons uncomfortable, and maybe, really, I think that is exactly why we must talk about it. Yeah, can boys be raped? It's a question that challenges assumptions and cultural beliefs and even legal definitions. And so today we will try to unpack it layer by layer. We'll have somebody speak from the law angle, and we would also have a speaker who would share with us research. And we'll also have someone who's, share, their lived experience. But before we go into that conversation itself, just allow me to briefly share who we are as an organization. Who are these people holding this knowledge and to us as a group? Our organization is Sexual Offences Awareness and Response, and we generally go by the name SOA Initiative. We are a child-focused non-governmental organization that began its operations in 2011. And our work really centered around preventing and responding to child sexual violence. And we have a vision where we hope to see a society where children are safe and free from sexual violence. And over the years, we have worked across schools and communities, mostly in the north central Nigeria, in order for us to move closer to that vision that we have. And it's worthy to note that through our interventions, over 86,000 children have been directly reached with information on child's rights, sexual violence prevention, adolescent health, and life skills. And we've engaged over 1,400 men and boys as gender advocates in promoting positive masculinity. We've also worked with communities and IDP camps to establish child protection committees. And some of these communities have even developed bylaws against sexual and gender-based violence. We've also trained community leaders to respond to sexual violence, and we've created safe spaces for girls, to put agency and leadership. A very important part of what we do is captured through our SOA Child and Teen Support Center, where we provide counseling, medical referrals, legal aid, and other support services to child survivors. And interestingly, in the first 3 months when that center began operation, we recorded over 200 cases. And that was in 2020. And since then, nearly 1,000 child survivors have received support. So, but all of this thing just tells us one thing. All of these that I have shared tells us one thing, that we still have a lot of work to do. There is progress, but there is still work to do. And so that is why part of our work is expanding this conference to include every child who may be vulnerable, including boys. So at this point, I would like to invite someone whose leadership and passion has continued to drive this work forward. And so please, using the React buttons, join me in welcome our Executive Director, Mrs. Chinyere Eyo, to give us a welcome address and to set the tone for today's Knowledge Cafe. Ma, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Comfort. I'm really excited to be here. I can't wait to get into the conversation and hear what our speakers have to say. So good afternoon, everyone, our distinguished speakers, our partners, our colleagues, and our participants. So on behalf of the board and team at Sexual Offences Awareness and Response Initiative, also known as SOA. I warmly welcome you all to this virtual knowledge cafe as we examine the question that Comfort has asked. Can most of their attention focuses on girls. Now, this is because yearly affected, they face higher risks of sexual abuse, early marriage, exploitation, and other forms of gender-based violence. So the work to confront patriarchy, to confront gender inequality and violence against women and girls remains urgent and non-negotiable. And to that commitment, we stand unwavering. But today we widen the lens because Comfort has told us that it's important not to dilute that struggle, all of the actions around, supporting girls, not to compete with it and definitely not to undermine it, but to strengthen it, because as a child-focused organization, when we say children and we talk about children being abused, we mean both girls and boys, because as minors, girls and boys are vulnerable to sexual abuse and molestation. Why? Because both can be coerced, both can be silenced, and they can be silenced by fear, by shame, by manipulation, and stigma. Yet, boys who experience sexual violence as well often face an added layer of invisibility. They are not seen. Their pain may be questioned, their masculinity challenged, and they may even be laughed at and their experience. Imagine a boy saying, mommy, I was raped, or talking to someone and saying I was raped. It is possible that society will laugh at such a child and so force that child to keep that pain hidden. And as a result of that, many will grow up carrying trauma that is never named and does not heal and has not been healed. Now, let's remember that the boys we overlook today end up becoming the unhealed men who struggle with anger, struggle with confusion, struggle with shame, or a distorted understanding of power, relationships, as it were. And so they end up becoming, these boys that we neglect, end up becoming the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the teachers, and the leaders of the girls that we are working so hard to protect. So we see why this conversation is needful. It's about ensuring that no child is invisible because of gender stereotypes or because of gender stereotypes, but it's about strengthening the entire ecosystem of child protection. So today, we are privileged to hear, we're going to be having, seasoned professionals who will bring the weight of their pedigree, to bear on this conversation. We have Barrister Kenechukwu Agu, a legal luminary, and also a board of trustee member of SOA Initiative, who will be talking to us, from the legal lens, from the legal angle. We've been introduced somehow to Dr. Research, which he has conducted here in Nigeria, yeah? And then also we'll be hearing from a courageous individual who brings his lived experience as a survivor to the conversation. I'm talking about Prince Kevin Fineface. Thank you all so much for agreeing to do this with us. I have no doubt that their insights will help us challenge assumptions, deepen understanding, and improve the way we respond. So let's get our questions, our comments flooding the chat box, and at the proper time, we'll turn the conversation over to the other side. So at SOA, we remain committed to providing prevention and survival support solutions to childhood sexual abuse, which we've been doing since 2011. So once again, thank you all for joining us. And I look forward alongside yourselves to a rich and meaningful conversation. Thank you. Comfort, I hope I didn't overstay my time.
No, I think you actually did very well. Well done, Ma. Okay, so Dr. Emeka, I'm sorry you will be coming up now. Barrister Kene was supposed to come off first, but we are having some network challenges, so we'll just have to maneuver that. So while I am doing your introduction and reading your biography for profile rather, sir, please just set your presentation slides to progress, sir. Okay, so thank you very much, ma'am, for your welcome address. We appreciate that. And thank you for all that you do for the organization and for being the amazing leader that you are. And so this afternoon, we'll be looking at what evidence shows, what do studies reveal about male sexual victimization. Sometimes it's okay to have an idea. Sometimes we underestimate how often or how serious this situation can be, largely because we do not have statistics to back them up. So, but yeah, we have Dr. Emeka, who will help us unpack, this from his research and evidence-based perspective. Dr. Emeka Thaddeus Njoku is an assistant professor of global security and society at the University of Birmingham, UK. He's a political scientist trained in Nigeria. His work focuses on international security, governance, and social justice, particularly the societal impact of counterterrorism on civil society, gender, and sexual minorities. His research has been published in leading journals such as International Affairs, African Studies Review, and Critical Studies on Terrorism, and he has received prestigious fellowships from the British Academy, Who Trust, and the American Council of Learned Societies. We are deeply delighted to have him join us today. Dr. Emeka, thank you for joining us, and over to you, sir. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Can
yes.
hear you.
Yeah,
Yes, I
okay.
will.
All right. So yeah, thank you all very much. I really appreciate SWA for inviting me to giving me the opportunity to present some of the findings of my research, and that borders on conflict-related sexual violence. So my research, I did just a brief introduction, I did my PhD, all of my degrees were in Nigeria. I did my PhD at the University of Ibadan, master's and PhD at the University of Ibadan. And my PhD was around the effect of counterterrorism policies on civil society organization. And so what brought me to studying sexual violence was an NGO worker who asked me why I had neglected issues around the effects of counterterrorism on women generally, and that took me. I mean, I wasn't really prepared for that because that was not what we were focused on as at the time. And so from there, it's sparked my interest around the effects of counterterrorism on gender and sexual minorities, and that was how I started studying this particular topic. But I started from women. It was focused on the experiences of women in counterterrorism operations in northeastern Nigeria. There was a paper I published, Sex for Survival, which captures the sexual violence of women and girls in northeastern Nigeria. And so from there, it was even women advocates that informed me about the issues of sexual violence of men and boys. So these were women advocates, women NGO workers who were the ones who stated, "Oh no, not just women and not just girls and women, men and boys are also victims of sexual violence." But then I knew that that would be a very difficult research. It is what they would define in much hard to reach population in the sense that it will be very difficult for you to get a man who would admit that they've been sexually violated. So, and it also requires money, lots of money to be able to do this research. And so I I applied for a fellowship from the American Council of Learned Societies, which you see their logo. I was fortunate to win that grant, and that grant led me to be able to do this particular research. And that I did the field work in 2020. So that was how I was able to do this research. And so in terms of the key questions that define this research, there were just two major questions that I proposed to the American Council of Learned Societies. And one is that how does conflict-related sexual violence affect in ways masculinity is understood, expressed, and experienced among men and boys. So more like moving beyond the experiences of women and girls to look at it in terms of how it affects men and boys. So one of the key questions. Another one is how can research and policy approaches examine masculinities without relying on gendered assumptions or stereotypes about innocence, victimhood, and who is considered vulnerable to sexual violence? What does it mean? I'm trying to say that when we talk about sexual violence, we see it in binaries of male perpetrator, male perpetrator, female victims. And so there's this assumption that a man cannot be raped. Men are invulnerable, impenetrable when it comes to rape. So, but then I tend to question. So, how do those are stereotypes? How do we question this stereotype around people, around specific bodies, or those who are considered vulnerable and those who are not considered vulnerable? These are academic terms, so break them down. So, basically, what I'm trying to say is that there is a need for us to look at the experiences of men and boys when it comes to issues around sexual violence, question those masculinity. And it was in the Lake Chad region, of course, the northeastern Nigeria borders, Lake Chad. Lake Chad is if you look at that map, you see there's a river. That's the Lake Chad. So they have other countries. Nigeria, Chad, these are countries that border Lake Chad. So, and if you look at counterterrorism operations, there are all kinds of actors involved. You have terrorist group Boko Haram, ISWAP, and you have new one. What was the new name? They keep, new sets keep emerging. So we have counterterrorism security agencies. So the counterterrorism security agencies comprise of various security outfits. So it's not just the military. You have the police. You have various uh, military in the army. You have the 7th Division of the Nigerian Army, you have the DSS, you have the National Security and Civil Defense Corps. So there are all kinds of security agencies involved in addressing the issues of terrorism. So, yeah, that is the context of my research. What we cite or location odds. I engaged, interviewed up to 31 participants, which includes male survivors of sexual violence and also security agents, NGO workers, and legal professionals, human rights lawyers or so. But before then, I got ethical clearance from the Ministry of Health because this is what they classify as human subject research. So you can't just go into the field; you have to get ethical clearance. So I got ethical clearance from the ministry in charge in providing this clearance at the Ministry of Health in Abuja. So the research is propulsive and the use of snowballing sampling. That's because I'm interested in a particular and snowballing because of the nature of the study. So you have to, use snowballing, get people who refer you to other people. So these were so in terms of primary and secondary data, these were primary data and also secondary data from all forms of reports from NGOs, international and local, and all of these were used to write up the findings of my research. So as academics, we need to write the findings of our research in various journals. It has to go through various peer review process. And if you go online, you see some of these papers. The first I started studying was sex or survival, like I said. So I don't go into details of traffic of food. This captures the men of Eastern Nigeria. But going what are the situations producing vulnerabilities? So if you look at their various factors that and that borders on the, of course, the conflict, which has led to huge socioeconomic inequalities around there. People have been displaced as they are displaced in different parts of northern Nigeria and also the Lake Chad. So they don't have access to their resource. I mean, daily resources, things that they use for survival for years. So they are out. So there's more like the conflict has reinforced socioeconomic inequalities, that exist prior to this time, but it's reinforced because of the conflict. And so there are all kinds of poverty, displacements, and all of these are drivers. So it creates, and also the violence in the Northeast, the breakdown of law and order also provides a platform, all kinds of for men and boys to be vulnerable to all kinds of violence. So material scarcity, lack of food, shelter, education are often instruments that are weaponized by perpetrators to gain control, to exploit many of these boys. So sexual violence is embedded within the humanitarian and conflict governance structures, and not only in the battlefield. So in terms of where sexual violence occurs, we have, of course, IDP camps. IDP camps are scattered in different parts of Nigeria, including Abuja. So there are even some IDP camps in places in the southern part of Nigeria, including Lagos and all of that. So where some NGOs have tried, they've gone to bring some of these victims in different locations, different parts of Nigeria. So this is where this in these IDP camps you have security A too. So, and the findings of our research, we have had boys who stated that some of the boys said situations whereby security agents work with and camp officials, work together to engage in these forms of abuse, in these camps. So detention facilities is also a place where various forms of sexual violence have been, reported to have taken place. And also in secluded locations within the communities, you'll find all kinds of, these are the places where these events, sexual violence have taken place in different parts of northeastern Nigeria, generally in all IDP, in many of the IDP camps. I'm not saying all. And so, who are the actors involved? Like I said, we have institutional actors, camp administrators, humanitarian workers, yes, humanitarian workers, security agents, in detention, also those engaged officials in detention facilities, civilians, community men, local men in these locations have also been involved in these various forms of sexual violence. We also have wealthy people. Some of the victims reported that they have people who they believe are wealthy. They come to the camps, take some boys, take them to different locations, promise them education, promise them better life, and only for them to be sexually violated and bring them back. Some of them were even drugged, and they are sex trafficked locally. So we have armed group, of course. Boko Haram are also involved in sexual violence. Boko Haram, various forms of terrorism based on the narrative of the boy. So these are the actors who are involved in various forms of sexual violence. And in terms of how these violence occur, you have what we call transactional sex. So based on the economic challenges in the Northeast, so a lot of these boys are, offered food, money in exchange for sex. Some are sex trafficked, some are used as sex slave. So some are deceived, like I said earlier, they promise them education, good promises, only for them to be trafficked locally and sexually abused. And some take advantage of their power, the power they have in terms of their position in authority to be able to do that. And some are opportunistic rape, when they found themselves in locations where in spaces that are dominated by men, so they engage in these forms of sexual violence, particularly for these many of these armed groups. So these are places where these things occur. And so, but what are the consequences of all of this? Of course, in terms of physical, psychological, and all forms of harm, the boys have all described both but not just psychological, but also physical and all sort of social, legal harm that they believe affects them based on their experiences. So boys' experiences are systematically, and of course, like I said, institutionally, their voices are silenced by various social norms that have been, that have, reinforced this silence. There's this particular norm called kunya. Kunya is what they call good behavior. So if you engage in what academics define as non-normative sexual encounters, what I mean by non-normative sexual encounters, if you engage in same-sex relations or whatever, you're supposed to be silent about such conversation. So even those who are sexually violated are expected to be silent about such conversation because it's termed as good behavior. And so that is one of the social norms that have, reinforced the silence of men, not just individually, but collectively as society. So most people, when they have this, they are silent because speaking about it doesn't really get you the help that you need. Rather, you get stigmatized, you get shamed, and all of those things. So also fear of retaliation, stigma, distrust by local authorities. They don't trust local authorities. Some of them say they don't trust local authorities because they are also perpetrators of these things. So they don't trust most people. So these are the type of the part of the findings, that we got from, discussing with the boys, discussing with NGO workers in, in our research. So yeah, I believe I've not used my time. So yeah, I'm open to questions. I know I have to rush these. So these are the more like the findings of my research on conflict-related sexual violence against men and boys in northeastern Nigeria. So I'm open to various forms of like questions that you have around these issues that I'm willing to share. So thank you all very much for listening to my presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Emeka. I am impressed by how you managed the time, exactly 15 minutes. Thank you so much for keeping to time, sir. We appreciate. So
Yeah.
we've heard what research shows. And yes, like Dr. Emeka has, opened himself up, he has, said we can ask questions. So if there's anything that you think is research didn't address, you can drop it in the comment section, and just at the end of all of our speakers, we would, uh, ask him. Before we talk about lived experiences, let us just ask a couple of questions. First of all, does our legal system even recognize boys as victims of rape? Dr. Emeka's session made reference to the fact that there are just certain cultural behaviors, the kunya, angle of it as well. So, but does our legal system even recognize boys as victims of rape? What are the protections? Where are the gaps? So to help us understand the legal framework, we have Barrister Kene. He coordinates a network of over 500 legal professionals across multiple jurisdictions and serves in several key governance roles, including Secretary of the Bayes University Abuja Law Journal Editorial Board and the Opo Education Development Trust. He also sits on the Board of Trustees of the Sexual Offences and Awareness and Response Initiative and Sanitas Health and Development Foundation. And he's a member of the Nigerian Bar Association's Electoral Reforms Committee, the FCT Judiciary E-Filing System Committee, and the Federal Administration of Criminal Justice Monitoring Committee, where he represents civil society organizations. The development sector, he has held senior leadership roles at the Public and Private Development Center, managing partnerships with government ministries, international development organizations such as the US State Department and UNDP, and numerous civil society actors. As Senior Programs Manager for Access to Justice, he supervised 180 staff and volunteers across 8 states, managed budgets exceeding 250 million, and led major criminal justice reforms, including court digitization projects, legal aid coordination for over 900 pretrial detainees, and nationwide legal education and judicial exchange initiatives. He also holds professional memberships in arbitration, mediation, and management bodies, and recently completed a non-profit management for senior executive certificate from Lagos Business School. I had to read all of this just so that you know the capacity that we have for you today. So, without further ado, we are learning, or me looking forward to learn from you, Barrister Kene. Please, the floor is yours and welcome.
All right, thank you
Yes,
very
please
much.
celebrate him in the comment. Yeah, thank you.
Just to confirm that everyone can hear me, can I have a confirmation? Comfort, are you able to
Yes, I
confirm
can
that you
hear
can
you,
hear me?
sir. Yes, I
All
can hear
right,
you.
all right. Thank you very much. I joined a bit late, but I met Doc during his presentation. Very wonderful one. Before I go into the legal perspectives, the fact that, are you able to share my slides or you'd want me to do that?
If you have your slide
Hello?
and you want, okay, by you.
Okay, let me just share mine. Confirm when you can see it, please.
Yes, sir. We can see it.
All right, all right. Thank you very much. I think if you look at the two pictures on the first page of my slide, the first one is a boy that says stop. And yet you see the picture of another one that his mouth is sealed and it says he was raped by her. Why is the boy saying stop? He's not able to talk. Why is the other man's mouth sealed despite being raped by her? The fact that we're having this conversation and the topic is can boys be raped tells us that there is a challenge. There is a cultural challenge, which also has led to a legal problem. But the question I will be answering this afternoon in very clear terms at the end of the day is to find out that yes, indeed, boys can be raped under our laws. The concept of rape is a global phenomenon. It's not just an African thing. It's not just a Nigerian thing. The whole world is looking for solutions to rape. The whole world is looking for solutions to sexual offenses. The whole world is looking for solutions to sexual vices. Just yesterday, my wife brings me a chat and says, "Oh, can you see this screenshot?" Apparently, it's a chat from a Nigerian celebrity where she made some comments about a 4-year-old and another about a 16-year-old. That of the 16-year-old got me really worried. The one of course, the 4-year-old also got me worried, but the 16-year-old, for both of them, the 16-year-old was, a boy of 16 made me feel this way. I've never felt this way before, something in that line. I don't have the exact words. The one of the 4-year-old is he wants to lock lips with me. Something about should I let him? I mean, this is an adult female passing these comments about male. Now, while some developed countries have taken serious measures in controlling the issue of rape, in Nigeria, the fight against rape has almost always been to protect women and girls. And here is the deal that people don't know. A boy who is raped has the propensity to perpetrate that action against the people who we are protecting. So if we are talking about women, we're talking about girls, and nobody's paying attention to what is happening to the boys, we would eventually train boys who will become men that will perpetrate these actions that we're trying to solve in women. Now, the issue of rape should not be looked with a gender-based lens alone. There is nothing that stops us from considering whether boys should be raped. And boys in this question, I also mean men, because there are some men who are in relationships or in situations where they suffer rape and nobody sees anything about that. I'm not sure my 15 minutes will be enough for me to go into definition of rape, right, in full details. But rape is defined as the act of forcibly engaging in abusive violence or consensual intercourse with a victim. It can happen in different forms: gang rape, public group, marital rape, which is still a problem in Nigeria, which is being discussed. I'm happy that some churches are now beginning to talk about spousal rape. And for the avoidance of doubt, under Nigerian laws, there is such a thing known as spousal rape. That a man or a woman is your spouse does not mean you can get them whenever you want. You have to seek their consent. Part of the things that Dr. Emeka had talked about was war rape, things that happen during periods of conflict in places of conflict. But the underlying thing we need to know that comes to mind when you talk about rape is that there is no consent from both parties involved. That is where we are talking about adults. Where children are involved, the law does not give a damn about consent. Where a child is involved, and by definition of boy, children are included. Boy child is involved. There is nothing like consent that is involved in that circumstance. Of course, there is the international legal frameworks that helps to support these. A whole lot of them: the UNDHR, the Declaration on Elimination of Violence Against Women, Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment, and the whole lot of that. Of course, CEDAW, as most of us might know. Now, despite our commitment to our international instruments, those instruments are really not address rape as long as Nigeria is concerned. Now, our constitution also have tried a bit to talk about human dignity, but that does not address the issue of boy rape. So you look at our domestic legal framework, you see the 1999 Constitution, the Nigerian Criminal Code, Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, and the Child's Right Act of 2003. Again, when you come to the Child's Right Act of 2003, you also know that there is the child rights laws of the various states, which has to be put into perspective. Why do we say it has to be put into perspective? Because if you are defining the age of a child in Abuja and not be a child in Zamfara, for instance. Someone can be a child in Enugu and not be a child in Katsina. So you have to look at what the laws in those in the various states have said about that. The same thing applies to the Administration of Criminal Justice Act of 2015. Let's look at the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. Please, if at any point you stop hearing me, kindly indicate so that I don't miss out, right? Now, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 is one of the Nigeria's first piece of legislation that expanded the scope of rape beyond what we have known previously. Before the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, rape was, basically penetration, basically talking about vaginal rape, right? But Section 1 of the Act itself, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, VAP Act, defines rape as the intentional penetration of a victim's vagina, anus, mouth, or any part of the perpetrator's body or an object without the victim's consent. Any part of the body that has been intentionally penetrated without the consent of that other person is rape. Now, this definition also covers situations where consent is obtained through fraud, force, or misrepresentation. The Act has also mandated a 12 years imprisonment for persons who are convicted of rape. Now, this is in contrast with the Criminal Code, which provides for life imprisonment. Despite the Violence Against Persons Act's notable advances, it remains insufficient for addressing the issue of male rape due to the limitation in the application to the FCT, unless and except when domesticated by the states. There are also limitations in terms of court jurisdiction. The Act made the jurisdiction exclusive to the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory. Now, the question that comes to mind would then be, what then are the legal remedies for male rape victims in states where VAP is not domesticated? In fact, I share a story with you. One of the reasons, one of the days I posted the flyer for the program on my WhatsApp status, an acquaintance reached out to me with laughing emojis. And I'm like, why are you laughing? He says he has never believed that there is anything like raping of a boy. But that when he saw the post, he had to go to the internet and look up materials and found that truly boys can be raped. Now, let's look at the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. Section 314 of that act acknowledges the necessity of providing appropriate remedies for victims of rape and other sexual offenses. Now, before this act, there was no remedy for the person who has been raped, for the person who has been violated. It was only punishment focused for the offender, but there was no succor given to the victim. Now, Section 306 of that act mandates that our courts shall dismiss applications for stay of proceedings in criminal cases to ensure that they are concluded within reasonable time. Now, what this does is that, look, it helps us promote or it helps a faster process of rape cases. If you see the case of Federal Republic of Nigeria versus Lawan, 2018, the court, of course, told us that the provision for speedy trials is a significant step towards rectifying the issue, making sure that victims, including those of rape, receive swift justice. But one aspect of this that has been in existence since 2003, which people do not talk about, the boy is a child. And if he's a child, he comes under the purview of the Child's Right Act. Section 31 of the Child's Right Act tells us that anybody that has sexual intercourse with a child is guilty of rape and shall be convicted and shall upon conviction be sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, sub 1 of that section 31 goes on to tell us that it is not the consent, it is not the business of the law that at the time you were committing that act, you believed that that child was above 18. It is not also the business of the law that consent was given. A child cannot give you consent. So any sexual intercourse, remember, the VAP Act has expanded the sexual intercourse, has expanded the meaning of rape, has expanded the meaning of this to include even the maids, the nannies who touch the sex organs of boys without recourse to the effect psychologically that has on the child when the child grows up. Section 32 of the Child's Right Act talks about abuse and exploitation, and that is 14 years imprisonment. Now, what are the remedies that I think we need to curtail male rape in Nigeria? Number one is that there is need for us to intensify our existing legal and institutional frameworks. Scratch that. I may beg to also add something here. I want to add that instead of just intensifying the existing legal framework, we need to talk more about these things. We need people to engage in these conversations. How many male conferences do we have? How many people go to schools and talk to the males and talk to the boys about rape? How many people even tell, now, if a boy is raped, how do we solve of course, Dr. Mecca told us his findings from his research showed us that there are cultural barriers to males speaking up for rape. Now, what are we doing to make sure that these cultural barriers are actually nipped in the bud? Of course, speedy prosecution of perpetrators of the crime will also be a huge one. Again, Dr. Emeka's finding revealed to us that the rich are one of the perpetrators of this dastardly crime. Now, the removal of technicalities in the enforcement of laws against male rape, psychological support to victims are also important. Public sensitization and education is the key to beginning to solve these problems. In conclusion, because of time, I would like to say that the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and the ACJA, and of course the Child Rights Act, as the most progressive and transformative legislation which addresses the occurrence of male rape in Nigeria. Despite the progressive nature of these legislations, it does not directly, especially the ACJA, does not directly address the substantial offense of male rape. While there are other factors that, such as procedural technicalities and the burdensome requirements of establishing the offense of rape, there is need for a collaboration between the stakeholders, NGOs, international bodies, to strengthen our fight at combating male rape. For me, I want to end on this note. We should know the boys also these same things the girl children face. The boy child we neglect today will become the husband of the woman that we are training for tomorrow. The boy child who is psychologically unprotected, who is emotionally unprotected, who is sexually unprotected, will eventually become a father to a girl child who would need protection. We've had incidences of men sleeping with their daughters, molesting their daughters. I believe that it's time for us to begin to raise the alert and warning for us to take care of the boy child if we want to save our future as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barrister Emeka. And thank you for keeping to time as well. We're really having amazing speakers who are trying their possible best to keep to time. And so we appreciate that so much. I like your closing because it's one that speaks to us as people and calls us to action. And aside all of what we are saying, this conversation is geared towards getting people, everybody, parents, the community members, to take action to ensure that every child, the boy child, the girl child, is protected. So moving forward, we have heard from the research angle, we have heard what the law also says. And while all of these are important and relevant to the conversation, it's important to note that beyond the laws and beyond the statistics are human beings, because sometimes we can get carried away with that and forget that, there are human beings. So behind every number is a story, and behind every statistic is someone who has had to live through that experience. So our final speaker for this Knowledge Cafe today is Prince Kevin Fineface. He's not going to be giving us a formal presentation, but he will be sharing insights shaped by his lived experience. Prince Kevin Bakaye Fineface is a security and business advisory expert with over 2 decades of experience in the security and energy industries. He is a certified VIP protection specialist and surveillance expert. He provides financial analysis, investment advisory, and cost-effective security and renewable energy solutions for households and corporate organizations. Interestingly, he's also a transformational leadership advocate, renewable energy supporter, and ICT integration expert, helping clients improve productivity and profitability through smart technology solutions. Beyond his professional work, he is also a motivational speaker. He's an author, a public affairs analyst, and a mentor who is committed to empowering individuals and businesses. And so Prince Kevin is also an advocate and a survivor who has chosen to speak up, because that is one challenge that we have also identified. And he has chosen to speak up and to challenge the silence around male sexual abuse. So, like I said earlier, rather than a presentation, we'll be having a short, moderated conversation. And so, thank you so much, Prince Kevin, for your courage and for being here. And so, over to you, sir. If you're here,
you. Thank you, Comfort. Appreciate IMSU. And thanks to the other presenters. Wonderful, very rich presentation. I hope that in the near future, we'll have a physical presentation with things like this so that more people can be physically present, especially considering the fact that, according to the president of the country, we don't have strong internet, so uh, we might have difficulty in transmitting or connecting,
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you, Sua, for putting this together. Let me go straight to the point. I like you asked if I had anything
Yes.
to
So
present. I said no. That lived experience is oftentimes best explained.
yes,
I want to be
thank
able to
you.
put
I don't know if you can still
graphical
hear me. Just
presentation.
confirm you can hear me.
Can you hear me? Am I being heard?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. Okay, yeah. So just to guide the conversation, I'd ask you some questions and then we would hear you speak. And so just shortly before we delve into that, just to remind our participants that the comment session is open to take your questions. And so you can drop any questions you have for either Barrister Kene or Dr. Emeka or even Prince Kevin as we go on, or for SOA Initiative for that matter. So yeah. So back to you, Prince Kevin, sir. Would like to find out, at the time of your experience, did you recognize what happened to you as sexual violence? And if not, what's made it difficult to name it?
Well, at the initial stage, I didn't know it was sexual violence. One, because there was no education to that effect. I was in my primary school, primary five, when it happened, roughly about 10 to 11 years, still having my bath outside in the open space. So there was no shame to get to know shame, you know. It started with a mother in the neighborhood who had asked that I help her with rubbing cream on her back, you know. And it was something I was looking forward to at first, that you get there, you have the access to such personality, you feel like, okay, you're not like the selected one. And what I've also come to know over the years is that perverts are real groomers. They groom you into doing things they want to do unconsciously, subconsciously. You find yourself desiring to want to do it. And it went on. Then another person, this time around, it was crazy. And like I was explaining to someone some time ago, I said, I didn't even know what it meant for you to have sex and ejaculate, right? And so when it felt like ejaculation, I ran out of the room with my clothes naked, just ran out to the open space because I didn't know what it was. It was later I get to know, okay, this was what it was. And the moment I got to know what it was, it became the most depressing thing at some points because I was angry. I felt being taken advantage of. I felt like, okay, this thing can be done. I can continue to do it. So I became a teenager, an adolescent, and the preference wasn't to even date my mates anymore. Because I've had experience with people who are older than me. So the confidence to approach older ladies was already being built as a result of that initial encounter, you know. And so as an adult, when I said that in a public space, somebody said to me, how can you say you were raped? Didn't you enjoy it? A lady said so. And I said, I think this is where the problem is now. That motivated me to now start talking about it and also going to schools to talk to boys so they get to speak up. And one time, someone who was living with us, my son, when he was about 2 to 3, I said she touched his penis. Like, that should be the last time she'll be in the house, And so we had to ask her to leave. She said she was giving him his bath. I said, no, because you touched him, you knew that you touched him. If you were just giving bath, you wouldn't be that sensitive to know that you were just giving bath, you know. So that's it for now. I think based on your question, I want to take my time to explain a few things, but I want to go by your questions.
Okay, thank you so much. So, from your response, you have, explained to us that it was difficult for you to name what it was, and you were not even aware because, I mean, there was ignorance largely. There's also been conversation, and Dr. Emeka made reference to that, Barrister Kenny also made reference to it about our patriarchal, norms and system. So how did those expectations around masculinity, being strong, don't be emotional, vulnerable, or be a man, and even the lady asked you, how can you say you were raped? Didn't you enjoy? How did it affect your ability to speak or seek help? Or do you think that could affect somebody else's ability to speak or seek help? But let's start with you first, sir.
Obviously, the thing is, the human being is designed with sensory receptors, which have a call sensory receptors. If someone touch you in an unusual way in the crowd, you will know that somebody has touched you. There's no two ways about it, and so that's how we've been designed. Now, for such statement, what it does simply is that it begins to make you to reconsider your position. If it was something you didn't like, you want to think that you should try it. For me, when that statement was given, like I said, it motivated me to now start speaking about it because I have also get to know so much about what rape is. Unfortunately, only until less than 10 years ago, we started having the boy rape issue being of national discourse. Like we heard what the barrister mentioned with the VAP thing. FCT is the only state that currently really, could deal with boy rape. Other states don't. There are no clear definitions. Other states are trying to adopt the violence against, persons, and all the prohibition of that. So, but they have not been able to domesticate it. And the reason is not in the northern part of the country, same-sex boy rape is prevalent. It's very prevalent. You'll find out that some under the guise of religion, some of these young boys who are sent for Almajiri education are being raped. They also grew up, so that was what, our first president also mentioned about the cultural thing. We talked about the cultural bias. It is not something you talk publicly. It's not something that the laws, even the penal code, do not even emphasize on stuff like that. I don't think it's there. The barrister will let us know. The criminal codes in the South, okay, yes, you have access to someone without consent, identified. So you do not necessarily are empowered to get to speak up by societal limitation, by religious limitations. You're not empowered to speak up. In fact, if a young boy comes to say he was raped, the first thing people will look at him, they will shame him. To say, why do you say you're raped? Because the presumption is that boys or men are the ones who rape. That's the stereotypical presumption. But it's not so. Boys are being raped. Men are also being raped. Even those who are not even with their spouses. There are gang rapes that I saw a video recently of two girls who are trying to rape a guy and insisting that, they must do it. Someone was telling me a story of what happened to her in school while she was in school. A young man, jumped their fence as to maybe to come and steal. So the girls gathered and gang raped him. Now, to them, it wasn't rape. They were punishing him, but they all took turns on him, and they were happy about it. So we have to change the narrative. We have to see that people get to know that boys too can be raped, men too can be raped. It's not a competitive posture to try to dilute or to weaken what is going on with the girls or with women. But that we need to show our human benevolence to know that, yes, these things that happen to the women also happen to the men. And I like what the barrister said. When you allow these people, these boys to go through what they've been through as regards rape, as regards level of humiliation and shame, they end up becoming monsters. Um, if you don't have grace, for those of us who are Christian, and you don't have a type of concerted effort, put yourself out of that phase. Abuse people abuse people. It's that simple. But that fact that you don't have to abuse because to do what I need to humanity, show benevolence and stuff like that. So we need to be able to get the conversation running to see that the act is condemnable and expressly states so. Then relevant laws should be made to empower people to get to speak up. And when people get to speak up, we should not first doubt it, please to investigate it. When I talked about rape, I was doing an interview a few years back, and I talked about rape, being raped. Everybody on stage was looking at me like, how is that possible? Right? How is that possible? If I don't have the confidence, I'll keep my mouth shut. But I say that is self-built up confidence. And so we need to create an enabling environment where boys can speak up. In most cases, the boys are being raped by men. Only a few cases from a little research, we find out that the female perverts are very limited, even though they are within reach, as family members or as neighbors or community members, that they tend to have desire for having little boys to molest or abuse. We have not seen it as a case of evil yet. I think that's what it is.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much, Prince Kevin. Just to confirm, we have certain limitations to boys or men speaking out as a result of expectations or masculinities. How can a man be raped? And that has a tendency to shut people who have not developed themselves to continue to speak out.
Say that again.
Okay, so I was just trying to reiterate or clarify that from what you said in response to the question is that, yeah, there actually does exist tendencies for men and boys to not speak about these issues because of, societal expectations or masculinities that are expected of men and boys. When people ask you, how can you be raped? And all of that. So it makes them, for people who haven't built confidence, self-esteem, like yourself, it could affect their ability to speak out.
Yeah, I agree
So
with you.
moving forward, because
okay. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for agreeing or for confirming that I heard that right. Okay, so for the final question, just before we go into more questions, because I can see questions that are directed to you as well, and to Barrister Kenne and to Dr. Emeka. So just so that we are within time, my final question would be that you made mention of that, yeah, but I'd like you to maybe go a bit more in depth. How did sexual violence affect you as a person, whether emotionally, socially, or in how you related to yourself and others as a man and others as a man? Were you affected, and how did that affect you?
Yeah, negatively so. I mean, if you have a little boy from age 10 who hasn't reached the stage of puberty, being exposed to such raw sex, the tendencies are like, how I'm going to describe it is that if you have a mango that is up there on the tree that is not ripe, you pluck it down and pinch the mango, bury it in the ground. In the next 2 days, you're going to find it like it's looking ripened, right? The truth is that the taste of the mango won't be the same thing as the one that was ripened up there on the tree. For those of us who have actually had the experience, it is what it is. And so the experience, will always leave you with a sour taste, which is the fact that I don't think I was 11 yet, because okay, let me put it at 11, and the experience, was that there was penetration. And I said earlier that I didn't even know what it meant to ejaculate, but that the feeling, which much later had to be interpreted as an adult, made me to run out of the room with my clothes out. Nobody could even suspect that something has gone on, because I have my bath outside. Neighborhood is just like a community. There was no special arrangement for you to have a bath in it. So if I walk around naked, it doesn't make any difference. So when I ran out of the room, didn't make any difference either, because it was normal for me to be naked as a little boy, But that was a penetrative experience, resulting to that instance that made me feel somehow. But I don't know why you of that. And get to have and out of minutes. So that was what experience that way. And how disgusting that. But what emboldenment that also gave, because I got emboldened to now not want to have such a relationship with my mates, because if you have done it with somebody that's far older than you, almost 2 times your age, any other person you see would think can fit for the same purpose, as mature person. So at 19, I already had adult relationships. At 19, yeah, because I remember so well, I was in secondary school when I had this relationship with someone far older than myself, And what it also does then was that it gives you, it causes this quick place for maturity. The body is supposed to take its time to get to stages. Exposing oneself to such, brings such maturity before time. The same thing that goes on with parents who expose their kids to adult content at home. If you notice, I did a research on that, you'll see young girls in their 12, 13, looking more mature like they're in their 20s. It is exposure to adult content early enough at home that results in it, because the hormones start secreting. Once the eyes start seeing, the hormones will secrete. Same thing happened to me, because after that experience, by 12, 13, I started seeing that, okay, I started having those factors that would be. So I was mature before my time. Or like my son, who is 18 and is still looking younger than myself, like I said I was, because he hasn't been exposed to such experience.
And God will help him. He will not be exposed until he's ready.
Amen.
Thank you so much, sir, for being sharing with us, and I'd like to think of it as sharing your vulnerabilities with us. Thank you so much for this. And so we'll just and thank you to all of our speakers. Barrister Kene has a meeting. In fact, he had that meeting for 4 p.m. and he's been gracious to still remain on the call until now. I don't know if he would still be here to take his first question. I mean, it's the only question so far for him.
Can I briefly speak to the question and then I'll dash out, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
please.
because typing
the
it will
question
not
was
answer.
asking.
Yes,
just for
I
the
got
sake
that.
of
What we need to prove rape. The same things you need to prove rape
Yes,
for the
sir,
girl
for a
child
boy
is
child.
what you need the same things that you need to prove rape for the boy child is the same thing you need to prove rape for the girl child. There are three basic things. One is penetration, whether it's anal, oral, or otherwise. That otherwise there is where I said we now have a leeway to get into other forms of sexual abuse that is not just penetration. Then lack of consent. Now for the child, that is gone. All you can prove is that the child is a child, that his age is below the age of children of an adult in that particular state where the event has happened, and then that he is able to identify the perpetrator, the person who has done this. Now, how do you gather evidence that you need? Number one, medical examination by a doctor. They are going to carry out swaps. They are going to bring unwashed clothing that was worn. Then the testimony of the victim. Of course, I don't want to go into the other legal details, which you may not be aware, but there are things we must know. Number one, do not wash the child. When a child comes to you and say this has happened, do not wash the child. Don't go and say, okay, go and take your bed. Let's go to the hospital. No. Carry the child the way he is to the hospital or to the first responders. Let them be able to get that evidence that is required there. And the best medical evidence is usually collected within the first 72 hours. Of course, this is also the window for administering post-exposure prophylaxis, like they call it, to prevent HIV and other STIs. So within 72 hours, make sure that that child has been taken to a hospital. Right? Now, I also know that the VAP Act is gender neutral. So whatever protects the girl child in the VAP Act protects the boy child. In many states, reporting is mandatory. Anybody who is aware that this crime has been committed against a child and does not report it, that person is going to be held liable as an accessory to that crime. So I think these are the few things I just wanted to point out in addition to answering the question, and then just to say thank you very much for giving us this statement. There's also a question that they said is for Barrister Kene as well. Not sure I saw what
Okay,
that.
it has to speak to the law enforcement, provision in the law enforcement. Are there in the communities, are our law enforcement agents aware of the provisions of the VAP Act? And
Oh,
can you
yes.
demand for it to be used to try cases without you
Yes.
being made to feel like you're trying to teach them what to do?
Our law enforcement officers ought to be aware. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. I'm being careful to say ought to be aware because these laws are our national laws. They are in the public domain. So our duty now as people who are in this space is to make sure that we continue to emphasize this, to make sure that we continue to teach it, not just to the public, but also even to the people who are enforcing this law. But the court is aware, the lawyers are aware, of course, the law enforcement officers are also aware. Thank you very much, guys. Sorry, I need to rush out now. I'm really, really, really very grateful. And I look forward to more of these conversations. And I think we should take outcomes from these conversations up to social media. Let's blow it up. Let's talk about it everywhere. The more we talk about it, the more people speak up, the more the boy child is protected. You train a boy child, you protect the woman. You train the woman, you save a nation. So to save a nation, you need to train the boy child. And training the boy child starts from taking care of his emotional, psychological, and sexual needs and urges. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Barrister Kene. He has done a wonderful job and has almost concluded a knowledge cafe on our behalf. Thank you so much, sir. I think that's a very resounding one. To train a nation, you need to train the boy child or to train, and all of that. It's really fantastic. I'm going to digest that and repeat it over and over until it sticks. Thank you so much, sir. So we have a question to Prince Kevin. The person asking the question wants to find out, how did you heal? And what advice would you give to other survivors on how to heal? So you also shared with us, this happened to you as a child, but you were able to build self-esteem for yourself and not allow yourself to, get carried away with the consequences, the negative consequences. And so, what would you advise someone else? How did you do that? And how would you advise someone else? Over to you, Prince Kevin, sir.
Okay. First is to know what is wrong. At early stage, I didn't know what was wrong. It was not something that was, frowned at by the society with which I lived. It was, and like I said, first I saw myself like somebody who had arrived, we kind of achieved. Being able to have access to such opportunities, in quotes, as was presented. But in the course of time, when you now realize that this was what it was, there's that place for reflection. It's where the healing begins to start. Because if something is not wrong, there's no way you can be healed from that which is not wrong. But I know for a fact that, it emboldened me to the extent to which I got into a relationship that far older than myself at that time. It's not coming from anywhere. It was false confidence as a result of experience, lived experiences. But in the course of time, you have to begin to speak to yourself because your human nature begins to speak as you get older. We're all designed with benevolence. And so one of the first things that I noticed started happening in my adult life, and when I mean adult, once you get past 2022, the adult clock starts counting, is to begin to live that life of benevolence. Then faith really contributed even to because as a Christian, reading the Bible, listening to messages, your mind begins to be reformed, your mind begins to be renewed. You now know what is wrong. You now know what good needs to be done. And so when the mind begins to process all of that, you have to tell yourself to forgive you first. Because once you're able to forgive you first, then your freedom begins from there. Then you forgive the perpetrator, the offender, and start ensuring that what has happened to you did not happen to any other person. Because if you do not fight for against the things that have happened to you, you will fight, to make those things happen again. Like I said earlier, abused people often abuse people. So the grace, discipline, commitment to cause for life will help change all of that narrative. And that was how my healing started from when I knew what was done wrong to me. That was when my healing started from. That brought about the result to say, look, this thing shouldn't happen to me, that person, because it was wrong. So, but how are we going to stop it if we don't get to create the consciousness of this out in the minds of people? Because a lot of people didn't even know that it was wrong. Even to this day, people still query it. How can you say that you're right? If you say it in the public, they look at you like, but this speaking English, they look at you with one kind of eye, like, are you sure? Because it's admissible, it's permissible, it's tolerable, but it's wrong.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry for cutting you. We're just trying to manage our time and see. So yeah, thank you to all of our speakers. And Dr. Emeka, just a final question. So from all of the conversation we've had today, we've all agreed that boys can be raped. So what advice do you have for parents, for teachers, for community members? What do we have to do to protect our children, but especially, in fact, our children, including the boy child? Over to you, Dr. Emeka.
Yeah, thank you. I think I saw a question before now. There's a question about what gaps, limitations in your research that needs to be taken forward. Yeah, so yeah, I think that is easier to understand. Yeah, easier to respond to. So yeah, we are working towards moving the research forward, right? We are trying to I don't want to it's a proposal, so I don't want to say it all out. I'm just saying that we are making efforts to take our research beyond theoretical postulations to to actual impact related activities in terms of, but generally it's more like highlighting the experiences of boys and helping victims, survivors, and every stakeholders to be able to speak up against issues around sexual violence. So it's a proposal that we are developing. So we're going to applying for grant for it. So yeah, so in future you might be invited for similar programs like these around the issues around conflict-related sexual violence. So yeah. Yeah, in terms of your question, in response to your question, I think for me, it's more about information, get the information out. Let's people know about the experiences of men and boys, aware various forms of awareness and things like that. I think information is key in terms of how people would respond to issues like that. Because oftentimes I've been in a platform where with security agents where they say, "Oh, I don't believe in anything like that." I don't believe all of things like that. And these are very senior officers who don't believe. So I think the problem is awareness, trying to get people to understand these issues, and that would reinforce or be more like a create a platform where we can then move forward in terms of making concerted efforts in addressing the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emeka. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say thank you enough to all of our speakers. You all have been fantastic. Thank you. We have a feedback form that is being a link, really, but a very short question or survey where we are hoping that our participants can share with us gaps, give us feedback, share with that they have, identified in the course of this registration or in the course of this program, what they hope that we can, improve on for subsequent conversations, because we intend to do this as often as possible and hopefully monthly or, as often as possible. So we would like your feedback to help us make this so much, much, much better. And like I had mentioned in my opening remarks, we have a child teen and support center where we offer counseling services and support generally for survivors. And please feel free to reach out to us. And you can reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. We are on Instagram. We would also be dropping all of those links in the comment section where you can join us and follow us to be aware and reach out to us and, ask us any questions that you have. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, and we're on X. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to us. Once again, thank you to all of our speakers. Dr. Emeka, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. Barrister Kene, who has dropped off the call because of another engagement, thank you. Thank you, Prince Kevin, for sharing with us. We appreciate all of you. And thank you, our participants, because it could have been only us, yeah? And it wouldn't have made any sense. But yeah, we are all here. Thank you. Just before we leave, please, let's just I'd crave our indulgence to do one quick thing. Please, everyone on the call, just put on your camera, your video if you would, but if it's not convenient, it's fine. But so that we can get a picture of this event, for our archives and for our social media as well. So that, we can, yeah, thank you, Dr. Emeka. Thank you, everyone. Just very briefly, we'll just take a screenshot and then we can proceed.
Hold on, someone said I did not answer his question. I think I did. I don't know what that question was.
Okay, sorry, could you please drop the question again just in case we missed it somewhere, if that's not too much to ask. Sorry, Adeni Adeshewo or Adesewo.
While we are taking the pictures.
Yeah, so Evelyn, kindly confirm that we have that picture taken. If you haven't taken it, let's have it taken so that we can round up. We are sorry, we've tried to manage our time. Yeah, we tried to make sure that we ended by 4:30, 1 hour, 30 minutes. Yeah. Okay. can we come back to that? Yeah, so Evelyn, kindly
I
confirm
answered
that.
that question. I wasn't listening. I answered what the person is asking. Maybe we'll get a
Yeah,
recording.
okay, thank you. Yeah. Evelyn, confirm when you've done this so that we can proceed. Thank you. So just in case, Adini, you weren't answered, he made mention of that. He said it happened at the age of 11 and so let's not go back to that because this is really, it's a vulnerable conversation. And so much details, plus this is a public platform. So too much details may not necessarily be, so yeah. Evelyn, confirm, please. Our smiles are fading. Thank you so much, Ugochi and so forth. So if I do not add any titles to your name, I apologize. Victoria Baye, thank you so much. Yes, Adini Adeshewo, thank you for joining. Thank you, Dofa and Faji. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your warm comments. Thank you. Okay, so but at the end of today's meeting, one thing is certain: boys can be raised, and it is our responsibility to ensure that children around us are protected from sexual violence, generally from any form of harm. And so it's our responsibility as community members. We've learned that there is protection of the law to protect children, to protect boys and girls. We've also learned that there is actually rape actually does happen to boys, and it happens either in the community, either in the IDP camps, by rich people, by and children who are vulnerable in people's homes, all around. It's happening all around us. And so it's important that we do not miss out. We do not ignore when we see some of these signs that speak to a child being abused. And let us speak out. It is our responsibility. So like Barrister said, I said I was going to think through it and come back. If you train a boy child, you're protecting women. Women, you're building the nation. And so it's really important that boy girl is protected so that we have a well-rounded individual, emotionally, psychologically, in every form. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. I can't say it's enough. We've made this a success and we appreciate. Thank you. Thank you. Please do not forget to follow us on social media. Do not forget to fill the feedback survey just so that we can get better. We can get better. This is our first knowledge cafe, and we are happy for the feedback we're getting, but we'd also like to, hear what we can improve on and do better. Thank you, everyone, once again, and enjoy the rest of your
And you
evening.
too. Thanks for anchoring so well. We appreciate. Bye.
Thank you, Mom. Bye. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, moderator. You did well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Johanna. Thank you, Mr. Pius Peter Linus. Thank you.